The question is that the motion be agreed to. Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr. Speaker, we continue at this stage to support this bill, but we do have major reservations, and I'm signalling now to the government that at committee stages we will have amendments that we want made, and it is likely that our support at third reading will be contingent on those amendments, Mr. Speaker. And I want to talk to the reasons why we do have some level of support for this bill, but also why we have such strong reservations. We know that the bill amends the Social Security Act 1964 to extend the existing youth service to all 19-year-old beneficiaries with children and 18 and 19-year-old beneficiaries without children considered at significant risk of long-term welfare dependency based on how the government's choosing to measure risk of long-term welfare dependency. Labor does support the extension of provisions for young people who may be at risk of long-term welfare dependency, as the government has put it, and supporting them toward a better future through youth services, which offers assistance with educational aspirations, employment opportunities, budgeting and parenting support. Our concern is that the framework in which this has been placed is faulty, Mr. Speaker, and we have real concerns with the government's social investment approach, or what they call the social investment approach. We have real concerns with the predictive risk modelling and real concerns with just the platform in which this support, so-called support for young people, has been built on. We've got concerns around the success of youth services, given that it is a relatively new intervention and comprehensive analysis has yet to be completed. We have asked for reports and evaluations on the existing youth services and have been given very little. So to think that the government is expecting this House to support further investment when we don't know whether or not it has been successful so far is a little bit presumptuous, I think, of the government. Mr. Speaker, rather than being solely focused on employment outcomes for young people, we think that the government need to be equally supportive and encouraging of educational achievement and higher level education for New Zealand youth, especially in light of the expected decrease in tertiary student numbers forecast in the budget. So just really concerned that there are low expectations, a lack of aspiration from that side of the House for our young people. If we look at this bill, the only expectation that the government has is that they will achieve level 2 NCEA, and after that there is no support for them to go on to further education. It is all about work obligations once that NCEA level 2 has been achieved. And we know that in this world that's not enough, actually, and if these young people have further educational aspirations, then they should be supported through the legislation to be able to go on and achieve higher than level 2 NCEA. So it's disappointing, Mr. Speaker, that that's not the case as it stands at the moment. And again, I just want to reflect back on the social investment approach. This is not just about moving people off. Well, social investment shouldn't just be about moving people off benefit in the short term. It should be about the long-term outcomes for these young people and the children that they have or are going to go on to have. It should be about investing in them so that down the track their life, their opportunities, their life achievements are going to be much greater because of the investment that a responsible government makes up front, Mr. Speaker. And the Minister is rolling her eyes at me, but the bill only supports education for these young people to level 2, and after that it is work obligations that take precedence, and we can't support that on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. For those youth who are looking for paid employment, there needs to be the jobs for them to go on to, and the government ignores the fact that actually under them they have failed to take responsibility in that department. They haven't been creating jobs, Mr. Speaker. In fact, and they haven't been creating job opportunities for these young people, Mr. Speaker. In fact, we've recently heard the Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, talk about the fact that these young people are pretty damned hopeless, actually. He went on to say that they were illiterate, he went on to say they were unemployable, and then he went on to say that the reason, because of this, the government has made the immigration process or system a little bit more permissive to make up for the fact that this new generation of workers, according to Bill English and the national government, are unemployable. And I just think, Mr. Speaker, where's the social investment approach in that when the expectations of these young people are so incredibly low? And where's the hope for those young people when they've got a government that doesn't back them, Mr. Speaker? Of further concern is the rising number of young persons, so 15 to 24-year-olds, not in education, training or employment, which is now at 87,200. That's 87,200 young people who are not in education and employment. That is over 26,500 more than when National took office. And so, of course, on this side of the House, we're going to question that government's attempt to address the situation because they've been unsuccessful so far. An increase of 26,500 young people not in education and employment, and the government is telling us that their youth service to date has been successful and are asking us in the House today to support a bill to extend the provisions of that youth service when clearly it hasn't been successful with a further 26,500 young people not in employment or in education under that national government since they took office. There are, Mr. Speaker, rising concerns about the ability of the government to support youth into quality, stable employment, given the failure of this government to facilitate benefit to work transitions for main benefits. Based on the March 2016 figures, with only 19,730 of the 49,907 benefit cancellations actually going into work. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the numbers of beneficiaries overall who have had positive outcomes, if we're measuring positive outcomes in terms of employment outcomes, then we can see that actually a large number of the people that have gone off benefit haven't actually gone into work. And so, of course, our concern for these young people is that success is going to be solely based on whether they go off benefit rather than whether or not they go on to anything better for them, Mr. Speaker. Because, I mean, even when we look at the better public service target that the government has set in relation to this, it's not about improved outcomes for those individuals or their families. All it's about is reducing risk of long-term welfare dependency, not that they actually go on to anything else, Mr. Speaker. And I think as a country, we should be concerned that we have a whole lot of people going off benefit who aren't necessarily going into work, who potentially not only don't get an income from a benefit, but also have no income from employment and are potentially living off nothing, Mr. Speaker. And I think many of us can see that every day with the increase in numbers of people that we see begging outside our shops and homeless, thanks to the national government. Mr. Speaker, Labor supports the amendment that came out of the Social Services Committee's report requiring consultation with the 18 or 19-year-olds in question about their referral to youth services. However, given the punitive culture of work and income with heavy-handed use of sanctions, Labor must call into question what this consultation will look like. Labor therefore urges that youth are consulted in a way that ensures they feel empowered and understand both their obligations and their rights, because even young people who have to access welfare have rights, and I think we need to remind the national government of that. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the other concern that I want to point out is my concern, Labor's concern, about the discrimination really against young people, young parents in this bill, because actually what we're doing is we're pushing them into work even sooner than is required for parents who are on sole parent support. This could, Mr. Speaker, have negative implications for their children's well-being. Mr. Speaker, this bill would require young parents to be in full-time education, training or work-based learning from when their child is only 1 year old rather than 3 years old under sole parent support, and can be even earlier depending on if there is a teen parent unit in that area. Now, of course, we support young people to get education and training, to be supported to go back into work, but young parents deserve the same rights as older parents to be able to stay home and care for their children if that is in the best interest of their children, Mr. Speaker. So we are concerned about the discrimination there. As I said, we will be putting up a number of supplementary order papers at committee stages And at this stage, after discussions with my colleagues, I think it is unlikely that we're going to be able to support this bill at the third reading unless there is some support for the amendments that we make at committee stages. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.